We got that one column, and we could go through and let's set up and start building some steps. We'll use a similar method for building the step. So we'll start from a view where we can kind of see what we're doing, and we'll go into align mode, and then we'll create a cube. Just drop it down, and we'll constrain the first corner that we want to constrain. Then we'll roll back to some other part in the scene, drag that up to constrain it a little bit better, and we'll do the best we can locking down this one point before we move on to constraining the rest of the cube. So then we'll constrain that corner, which should pretty much snap in pretty good. We'll constrain this corner, and then we'll constrain one corner along the bottom here. Now we may need to coach this a little bit more. We'll see. But each time you drag one of these points, what you're doing is you're creating a constraint. It's telling Nuke this point can only be in this area, in this place, and that will help it lock it in 3D. So we'll rock through here, see how that's doing. Seems to be lining up pretty well. And so now we have our first step. And now that we've got this cube aligned, we're going to use a slightly different technique to build the rest of our stairs. Let's see, first things first, let's clean up this geometry a little bit. I'm going to turn off occlusion testing. It looks like it's already off, and I'll select this back, these back faces. So I want to be in face mode. These two back faces, and I don't want these front faces. So I'm going to hold down Shift and Alt and deselect these front faces. I don't want to inadvertently do this edit to them. I'm going to right click, and I'm going to delete the faces. You could also select delete. So now those faces are gone. I'm going to hit delete, delete that, and delete this face over here. So now I've just created a shell for the front of this. I just want to make it more tidy. So I'm going to select edge selection, and then I'm going to bevel the edge. So it's possible to bevel edges as well. I dropped the bevel tool there. Let's go back into edge selection mode again. Select that edge, oops, edit there, and then hit enter to go into bevel mode. So rather than selecting it from the menu, I hit enter to get it. And we'll rock and roll through to make sure that we're putting this in the right place. We're lining it up well enough. And then we can hit enter again to bevel or extend that edge again. So this mode of like slowly extending and beveling shapes into shape, especially in image-based modeling, this is like pretty much the best way to do it, because especially once you get your world pretty well aligned. So I'm beveling up that shape, that edge again. Enter and bevel. Once you get your world aligned, enter, bevel. Everything should be pretty square. You should be able to continue to work along square dimensions here in Cartesian space. Enter and bevel. Enter and bevel. You get the idea. Oops, that one maybe didn't go back far enough. Oops. We'll rock and roll through just to make sure we're on track again. So I'm getting a little off track here, but we'll call this one far enough along for now, because I want to show, the next thing I want to show you is if if you would like to bevel the edges once they've been extruded like this, you can select the edges you want to bevel. I'm holding down Shift and clicking to multi-select the edges. And then you can select Bevel. And that will allow you to bevel the edges. And you'll see that when you bevel, you'll get an additional set of controls. So you can control the inset and other things. So we only want a tiny little bevel here. And if you wanted to round that edge, you could round it, but I don't think in this case that's really going to be much help to us. Oh, maybe one little edge there. There you go. And then click to drop the tool in the viewport. And once you're happy with your geometry, you could leave your model builder off to the side, and rather than keep it wired into your scene, you could make a frozen version of this geometry or bake it out for other purposes. So I can select the geometry I would like to freeze or bake out and hit bake. And this will create a standalone geo node with that geometry in it. It's not editable once it's been baked. And if we wire this into our scene, we can use it in our scene, but we could also write out our scene, including our point cloud, using a write geo node. So we can write out our camera, our point cloud, and our sort of aligned geometry. And if you wanted to take it to a more complete 3D modeling tool like Modo or Lightwave, you could bring this in via FBX, export the entire scene, including the cameras and the point clouds, and then you would have this guide geometry that you created and your cameras, or camera, your calibrated camera, and you could take this camera that you when you bring it into your 3D program and set up the images just like you did here, connect them to the camera or an image plane in your 3D modeling application of choice, and continue a similar process to this, rocking and rolling through, because the camera will be calibrated and you'll be able to see what you're doing. Or you could set up a projection in your preferred program.